In this video, I'm going to be building out the functionality for a company user to manage their job listings. They'll be able to see a list of all the job posts they've created for the company, view them by status, see how many applications have come in for them, and also be able to edit the job so they can change the status, modify details like the start date of the job, the description, and so on. So we're going to build off of our dashboard page structure that we've created here, this wireframe. And this first container is going to be our parent element for everything related to managing job posts. I'm going to go ahead and rename this group. We're going to call this group jobs. And I'm also going to make it a little bit wider. I'm going to give myself a little bit more room here. Let's change the max width to 1000 pixels, just a little bit wider. I'll remove my placeholder there. And now I'm going to build out the frame of how I want the user to view their job listings and also be able to edit them. Now I'm going to have a left and right side to this group. On the left, we'll see the list of jobs, and on the right will be a form that they can use to view a specific job's details as well as editing them. So I'm going to set the container layout of this primary container here to row. That way I can add two inner groups to serve as my left and right sides. In other words, these are going to be two columns inside of the row container, right? They fit left and right. And just while we're building this out, I'm actually going to color code the background so that we can see them a little bit more clearly. So this is going to be the left side. We'll call this group list. This is going to be the list of postings, and I'm going to create a copy of this group over to the right, and we'll call this group edit. Okay, and we'll change the color to something else just to keep them apart. Right, so they're the same size right now. I may decide to make one more narrow or one more just wider. We'll see what we end up with here. But at the parent level, group jobs, so if we go to our elements tree here, right, this is our primary container. This now contains our two inner groups. I'm going to change the layout style a little bit so that the container alignment is not so that they are left aligned. Instead, where we have them, we want to have them with space around, right? So we have a little bit of padding on the left side of the left group and the right side of the right group, and then even spacing in between so that they're distributed evenly inside of their parent. And for each of these individual groups, I'm going to center them vertically in their parent. So now we have a nice organized design here. So let's start with the left side. I just want to be able to display a list of all of my postings. So I'm going to use a repeating group for this. We'll make it about as wide as the group itself. And I'm going to relabel this to say RG jobs, and my type of content is going to be job post, and the data source is going to be a search for job posts, specifically my company's job posts. I don't want to see other people's job posts, right? This is from the perspective of the company admin managing their details. So we want to add a constraint here, company equals the current user's company. That way I only see my own. Now, of course, I can sort by a variety of things. I might want to sort by status or by title, just so that it's alphabetical, or maybe by the start date. So we'll go by that for now. We'll say the job that starts the latest is going to be at the top of the list. Okay, and right now we'll leave this to a fixed number of rows, 4 rows at a time, and then a fixed number of columns, just one column here. We'll adjust this in a moment so that we can scan through more jobs within this single view. Right now, the way that it's set up, I would have to create a paging system so that I can see the next set of 4, with the next button, or the previous set of 4 with the previous button. We're just going to wireframe things out first, and then we'll hook up all of the functionality. So inside of this cell, which we should define the layout style, let's do another row structure. And I'm also going to have groups inside of this cell as well. Let me open up my element border so that we can see the boundaries of everything. There we go. So on the left side, I'm going to display all the primary information. We'll just call this primary info. And then on the right side, so another group here, we're going to call this action buttons. We want to see a button here to select a job, right? So this is going to be a list of jobs. And on the right, I want to be able to choose to then see full details on the right side. And then the left side of this will have just kind of top level information so I can quickly scan through my jobs. Notice how I'm currently fixated on the layouts. more than the content and how I'm designing the appearance of the content. If you start on the outside and work your way in, you're going to set yourself up for more efficient development that way. Okay. Now I'll change this cells layout style so that we also have space around. And I'm thinking that this left side should actually be a little bit wider than the right side. I don't need too much space to display, you know, an edit button or anything. I want a little bit more space to display a title that might be a little bit longer. So I'm going to fix this group's width. Let's say, I'm not sure which responsive style I want yet. We'll start with a column here. That's typically my default, but I want to fix this width to, let's try 60. Oh, that's far too small. Let's maybe do 100. Yeah, we'll start there. We'll also center it vertically inside of the cell. And then this one can be, let's also do a column here, center it in the cell. Maybe we don't give this one a fixed width, but to have a little bit of space in between, we could do, we'll add some margin to the right side of this. Let's add maybe 20 pixels of margin. Oop, not 200, just 20, like that. Just a little bit of space there. And now that I'm seeing the way that these are laying out, I might want this cell to actually be a space between setting so that the very left edge is forced to the left edge of the cell and the very right edge of this element is forced to the right edge. And then, like I said, we have just a little margin here from the right side of our primary info. Now, I do want some controls above this list so that we can filter our list by status and also have a place to begin and create a new job. So I'm going to have a button up here. It looks like this container is still set to a fixed setting. So I'm going to change this left green container to a column structure, right? So now everything stacks one above the other. I'm going to add a little bit of gap spacing. Let's do maybe 30 pixels of gap spacing there. And this button is going to say create new post like this so that it's our first action item. Let's maybe change this to a green button. And I'd like for this to be a little bit smaller. Let's make this maybe 200. Well, let's do 150 pixels. There we go. Now, next to this, I want to have a drop down to be able to filter my post by status. If I want to see all of my, my pending, my draft posts, or all the ones that are archived versus the ones that are active. And I'd actually like for this drop down to be next to my button. So instead of falling below the button in the column, I'm going to create an inner row group that contains these two elements only. So I'm going to multi-select this button with the drop down. I'm just holding down my shift key, and then I'll right click this and create a row container so that they sit next to each other. But in the overall column structure of this green group, this group here is above the repeating group. I'm actually going to reverse the positioning of this. I'd like for the button to be to the right of the drop down, and I'll take down the height of this new group that I've just created, this new row group. Let's remove the minimum. Okay, and we'll also center it there. I'm going to take this drop down and center it as well. Let's make this row group here have no minimum width and have it, actually let's have it stretch to the full width of its container like this. And I will set the container alignment to be space in between. That way they are at the edges right there. I'm also going to take this green container, the group list, and give it a little bit of padding so that those items are pushed down just a little bit. So let's do maybe 20 pixels of padding down there. And I think that's good for now. Remember, these background colors are just there for now as I'm laying everything out. We do still have this other padding at the primary container level, our group jobs. So I don't necessarily feel like I need to push these in further. Okay. All right, so we have a good layout here. Let me also center my repeating group. There we go. For wireframing out where my elements are going to live. Now, on the right side, this is really just going to be a form to fill out and manage the post details. So I'm going to set this up to also be a column structure. And I'm going to go ahead and give this some gap spacing of 20 pixels. And now I can go ahead and add my form. So I'm going to have a form label as well as an input below it. So we'll do our first label. Let's do the job title like this. And down below this, we'll have an input that will be pretty wide. And I'm going to remove the placeholder simply because I like to have a label outside of that. But I'll label my input so that we know that this is the job title. And I'm going to group them together in a column container, right? So similar how I did the grouping of the drop down and the button in a row container, that was a shortcut. I did the same thing here, but I put it in a column container. Now this group, I'm going to remove the minimum height so that it can fit to the content. And I'm going to set this up to a point where I'm pretty happy with the way it looks before I clone this and duplicate it for all of my other inputs. That way I don't have to make the same adjustments multiple times. So for example, this job title label, I'm going to remove the styling here, make it bold, make it a little bit bigger in its font size. I think that's a bit too big. Okay. And let's have this group stretch mostly to the width of the container. So I'm going to remove the fit width to content. Also, this input, I'm going to remove the fixed width setting. You see how now it is fitting to the width of the parent. And I'm going to do the same thing for the text element. I don't want a fixed width setting. I'm going to have it fit to content, no minimum height. Let's see where it looks like it didn't change something. I didn't actually delete my minimum. There we go. And no minimum height, right? And then within the group itself that contains the title and the input, I'm also going to add some gap spacing, maybe 10 pixels, just to keep them a little bit apart. Now, here's where I want to push in just a touch so that they're not touching the very edges. And here I will add a little bit of padding at the group level. So maybe we'll do 10 pixels on the left and 10 pixels on the right. I'm going through all of these adjustments so that you can see and really have a lot of exposure to how much mixing and matching these settings will help you fine tune the placement of all of your elements, your layouts in general, but being really specific about where things land within their containers, and how also important it is to group things. You're creating groups around specific elements gives you more control. You create different relativity in their spacing and alignment. All right, so I'm pretty happy with this. This is going to give me a good starting point for all of my inputs. I'm going to go ahead and now copy this group and duplicate it a couple times for all of the details that I want to edit here for every job post. So the second one is going to be the URL path for the job post, so that way we can create a unique slug. This is going to be the description of the job post. I'm actually going to change the input for the description so I can have a multi-line. And then this one down below is going to be the start date. We'll also change this input. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to replace this input, right click, replace by another type, and we'll select a multi-line input instead. And I'm going to expand the height of this just a little bit so that it's clear. Let's rename this to description so that it's clear. You can have, essentially a paragraph here. Let's do 100 pixels in height, just like that. I want to make sure that all my inputs are renamed. So this is URL path, and the start date I'm also going to replace, right click, replace, so that we can swap it out for a date and time picker because a calendar is more appropriate for me there. And I'm going to add some more content below to actually trigger my changes. So I'll pull from this button here. I'm just going to paste it anywhere in my group because I can always move it in the column position by clicking on Make Last there. And let's have a couple of other buttons. So this is going to be our Save Post button. I'm going to copy this, paste it. We're going to have a Delete Post button like this. And we'll also have another drop down. I'm going to copy this here and paste this. Let me move this to the end, go back to layout, make last, so that we can modify the status upon saving. Maybe I want to save it as a draft or save it as a published post. All right, now these three things you might see that I want to create a row out of this. I don't want them all stacked like that. It's not very convenient to see it in this way. So I'm going to multi-select, save, delete, and the drop down, just holding down my shift key, right click, and create a row container out of those. Now I will make this drop down a little bit smaller in its width. Let's rename this drop down to saved status. That's ultimately what we're going to be working with here. I'll bring this smaller, maybe to 150 pixels. Let's see about these buttons here and why they are collapsing. So it looks like 150 is still not big enough or not small enough to fit all three onto this one single line. You see that extra space there? It's just too small for this drop down. What I might do now is just change the fixed width setting of the buttons. So let's go with 125 over here and 125 over here as well. So now there's a little bit more room. Let's bring this one down to 125 as well. And you can see that my group that contains all of them is actually fitting to the width of the content of its inner elements. I'm going to remove that so that it can expand. And I'm going to have the elements inside of that row stretch out to the width of the group. Now we're still getting this element is still collapsing down below. Let's see if we can correct that. Let's remove the height. There we go. So now they're all on one line. I'm going to move the Save Post button to the end, and that way we don't accidentally click on the wrong button, so we'll have them split by the drop down. And I'll also change the appearance style of the Delete Post button. Let's make it a red button. Let's do that danger style there. Okay, so now let's see. I'm going to make one more change, which is I'd rather not have these elements sit fully center inside of the group, especially if they're going to be mismatched in their height. You see how this has some space above and below, but this one, because there's more content, it's stretching to the full height. I could correct this a few different ways, just kind of depends on what look I'm going for, but if I stretch the vertical height of this group, then it will fill out that extra space with that green background. And I'll do the same thing with this purple group in case we do end up making it taller as well. We want them to match. So that makes things a little bit more uniform there. Okay. Let's see. I think I'm going to take down the size of my labels back down to 14 font. It seems still a little bit big, and just the slightest change in font size, especially when you have multiple elements, can make a difference in your height overall. It was a little bit of a decrease in height, but now it feels a little bit more comfortable here. Okay, so we've laid out our elements, right? This is generally the first thing that you want to do just to make sure that things are in generally the position that you want. You're more focused on your placement settings before any functionality. I mean, I was able to do a lot visually before I hooked up anything, because if I need to later make more adjustments to the layout, it may mean reconnecting things in the workflows, and I don't want to create extra work for myself. So now I can start to hook up some data sources and create functionality here. So let's start with the repeating group on the left-hand side. Like I said, this is going to be a search of job posts for my company. So I want to be able to display that information now. I'm going to take this text here and copy it into the cell so that we can now program this to display dynamically the job post's name. Now, notice how this says parent group's thing. That's because the text element that's sitting inside of this group has no reference to the cell's job post anymore. It's lost that reference. So we need to make sure that this group here, this primary info, maintains that reference from the cell so that it can pass it to its inner elements. So I'm going to set the type of content here to job post. Its data source is going to be the cell's job post. And now that text, let's see where it went. Let's go to list, repeating group jobs, primary info. Here's my text. It's because there's no content, so there's no width or height to it. I want to display the job post's title like that. Let's see, down below, I'm going to copy this and paste this. Let's actually make this not bold and make it a little bit smaller. So kind of some sub information. Here, I want to display the number of applications that have come in for this job post. So in this case, let's clear this expression. I'm going to do a search for applications where the related job post for that application equals the parent group's job post, right? I'm isolating those applications for this post, and I just want to count them up, okay? And then I can type in a text, some number of applications. Let's make this plural here, like this. All right, And below this, we could have a link to the public job post page for this post. Let's add a link element to do that so that we can preview what this will look like for users, for applicants. So we'll say view public page. This is just a call to action to view that page. And let's for now go to our internal page that we've created for job post, the data to send. This page has a type of content set to it for the job post data type. So it is expecting you to send a job post record. In this case, we're going to send over the job post of this cell. And I'll go ahead and open this up in a new tab so that we don't lose where we are in our dashboard here. I'll also go ahead and make sure that this is the same font size as everything else. And because it's a link, I'm going to underline it just to make it even more clear that it is something you can click on. This group, I'm going to give it a layout. Well, it's already set to a column. You see how things are stacking vertically, but I'm also going to create some gap spacing just to separate things a little bit, maybe 10 pixels of space, that we get a little bit more breathing room. Things are feeling a little bit cramped here, so I'm going to go to the repeating group and expand things a bit. Let's do not a fit height to content. This is feeling better for me. Remember, this is still fixed to 4 rows, but the overall dimensions of the repeating group right now is just going to continue expanding to its parents' limits. In this case, it's the group list, this green group in the background there. All right, so that feels better for me at this point. While we're here, I'm going to go ahead and change the style of the separator. Right now it's this dash line. I'm going to make this a solid and just bring down the color a little bit so it's a bit more subtle. And then once we remove the background of the colors, things will blend in a little bit better here for us. Okay, so we have some information there. I want to make sure that this title can expand to the full width of its parent. So I'm going to go into the layout and remove the fit width to content so that it just expands all the way like this. Okay. Now on the right-hand side, we'll have another button so that when we can click on it to select it and be able to modify the details over here. So we're going to pass data from the cell on the left over to the area on the right. Okay, so I'm going to add a button to this cell. I'm just going to copy one of my existing buttons, this delete post. Let's call this edit, and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. So I don't want it to be this danger button. How about we select one of our other styles here? We'll do this standard button. We obviously have a lot of colors happening here. I'm doing that intentionally so we can very clearly see the separation in our elements. When you start to reduce your color coding, things become more uniform. And of course you apply your styles that you have for your app's just overall aesthetic palette. So I'm going to remove the, let's see here. Let's give this a fixed height of maybe 30 pixels. I don't want it to be too big. And also a fixed width of 100 pixels. And below this, I want to display the status of the post. So I'm just copying this text into here so I can modify the expression. So I'll display, oh, look, we still have parent groups thing here. That means that this white group has no data source. So let's go to job post, and the data source is the current cell's job post. It's the same thing I did with the group on the left. Okay, so my text, which I've lost now because I don't have any width to it. Let's go to the text here. This is sitting below the button. I want this to display the job post status like that. Okay, great. And in the parent element, let me go to the parent here. This is the group action buttons on the right. I also want to give this a little bit of spacing between them. That's a bit too much for me. Let's do maybe half that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now we have a bit more of a styled display. And let's go ahead and hook up this filter to filter our job posts by status. I'm going to call this status filter. Now, in our data structure under the job post record, we have a text field to associate a status with a job post. We're going to introduce a different way of doing this here with an option set. I'm going to create an option set called job post status. And my choices are going to be what I had before, and I had it in a note right here: draft, open, hired, or closed. So in my option set, those will be my choices. draft, open, hired, closed. So if you have been building on Bubble before option sets were introduced, this is a great use case for working with an option set instead of a plain text field. Yes, we can achieve the same results with a text field, but option sets are much easier to manage and work with. And because they're not part of the data structure, in some cases, they can actually help improve performance. Okay, so those are going to be my status choices. I also like to put OS at the end of my option set names so I don't confuse them with my data types. And then under the job post record, I'm going to rename this text field to say text like this, but then create a new status field for the option set version of this. I would not normally use both fields, but just showing you the two different methods here. Status, option set, and we'll point this to our option set that I just created. So now a job post can be one of these now sort of built-in choices that we've created here. So with that, I want my dropdown to pull from my option set choices. I don't want to manually type in my choices. So I'm going to select dynamic choices here for the dropdown. We'll say the type of choices is job post status, and the source is going to be all of my status options. So it'll list them all. The caption will just be the built-in display field, so literally the name of each choice. Okay, and here I'll just change the placeholder to say filter by status. And my repeating group needs to communicate with this dropdown. So at the data source level of the repeating group, I'll add a constraint so that the status, my new status field, equals the value of that dropdown. That's going to be this one right here. And if the user doesn't want to filter by the dropdown, so they leave it blank, we're going to assume that they want to see everything. So I just want to make sure that Bubble ignores this empty constraint if they've left it empty. But this constraint will always be there because they can't remove that. We're always going to look for job posts that are tied to the company. All right. Now let's take a quick preview of this page to see where we're at this point. I do need to make sure that I'm running as a user who has a company and has some job posts. So let's take a look here. We have, let's go to the beginning. I think we have some City University posts. That's the name of the company. So I'm going to run as a person who is tied to City University. Let's scroll all the way down here. Most likely at the beginning here. We'll go to Ross. Okay, so I'm going to run as Ross. And Ross should be able to see his first 4 job posts. Here we are. Okay, so grant writer, assistant professor, math professor, we can see the counts of the number of applications that are for them. And here, if you can see the status, these are all open in this case. If I change the status to draft, then let me see here, one sec. It looks like this field, yes, this is actually tied to the old field. I was wondering why there were values there because I just created that new field. There actually should not be any values for any job posts under the new status field. So I want to show the display of that option set choice, but that actually prompts me to make a quick manual adjustment here. And actually this is something we'll be able to edit when we configure the workflows for this side of things, but I'm going to make some quick manual adjustments. Let's go to the job post for City University. Let me modify this view here. Let's go to company equals City University. Here are the 4 job posts, and I'm going to modify the new status field. We'll change this one to open. I'm going to give it a mix of things here. Dean of Students will say closed, and grant writer will say hired, and we'll also have another open here for the assistant professor. All right, now I'm going to refresh so that we can reload this data. All right, so we have all of our positions unfiltered, hired, open, open, closed, and now I can filter by open and it will show me just those 2. Or I can deselect and it will show me everything again. Okay, now I can of course do much more with stylizing these option set choices. I can create an attribute to maybe give them a color so that every single time we see an open status, we show it in that color. Maybe it's green, maybe a draft is orange or blue, closed is red, hired is something else, right? And I can then modify the color dynamically here based on whatever status that is. So we can really do a lot of customization. We're going to continue forward with just the basics here to hook the rest of this up. So now I want to be able to see the details of the post on the right side by selecting this. I want to click on the edit button and pass that information to the right side. So when I start an edit workflow here from the edit button, I want to display data. This is under element actions to the right side. So that is going to be my group edit. Look for right there, group edit. And the data to display is the parent group's job post. Now it's giving me an error because this group does not have a type of content set to it. It does not know to expect a job post record. So I'm going to set the type of content to job post. We don't need to set a default data source because I'm going to be defining the data source through the workflows. When we run this display data action, that's essentially what we're doing is we're setting the data source. So now Bubble likes this because I've set the type of content on that group edit container. Now that this has a data source, I can have initial contents, default values, pre-populate these inputs to show me what's currently there in the database. So for the title, I can display, here we are again, group parent groups thing. We need to make sure that these groups have data sources. So we're going to set job post and then parent groups job post. I'm going to do this for all of them. Job post, parent groups. For the description, job post, parent groups, and then same thing for the start date. And we will also need it for our buttons because those are definitely going to need to refer to the record. So consistency there. All right. So now my input is sitting inside of the group, which has the data source. And so the input can now pull from its parent and display by default the title. We'll do the same thing for the URL path. We want to show the parent group's post URL path. You can also work with the slug if you want to use Bubble's built-in slug system. For the description, we will show the parent group's post description. Same thing for the start date. This is the initial content, parent group's post, start date. All right, so now if I refresh here and I click edit on Grant Writer, you see how it fills in all the details here. I can switch over to Math Professor and it changes the details there. Dean of Students, Assistant Professor. I also think it's helpful to have this group only appear once there is a data source so that there's no confusion, right? So what we can do is on this right group under the Layout tab, we can hide it upon page load, but in the condition we can say when this group's job post is not empty. In other words, we've given it a data source, then we make it visible. It's a little conditional action to help guide the user through this screen. So you see here by default, we don't see anything except for the list. But then when I click on something, it makes it visible because now it has a data source. All right, so moving on to saving any changes, and then we'll end with creating a post and deleting a post. So I want to make sure I can save my record with a status. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Dynamic choices is going to be my job post status. The source is all statuses. The caption is just the statuses display. And then our default value is whatever status it's in right now. So the job post status. And I'll put the placeholder here to say status like that. So now let's hook up the workflow for the save post record. The save post button. So here we will make a change to the parent group's job post. And we're going to add all fields here, and we should have an input for everything. So the company is going to be the current user's company. The description will map to the input description, right? Everything should have an associated input. So we'll go to the start date should be our drop down for the date and time picker. Let's see if we can find where that is. Looks like we needed to relabel this. We'll call this date, time picker, start date, so there's no confusion. There it is, value. Our status option set is going to come from this drop downs values for the saving status. I'm going to skip over the text field because we're using the option set instead, so I'll remove that. And then the title will point to the input titles value and the URL path as well. right? So now we have saved all of our changes to the post. Even if I didn't make an adjustment, because those inputs have initial contents, they'll just save the same value to themselves. They don't get overwritten with a blank or anything like that. If you were to leave something cleared though, like this, then it will save a blank, because this is the change you're telling Bubble to do to that field. Okay, now it's also helpful to have a little alert message to let the user know that they were successful in their saving. So I'm going to add an alert message. Let's see here. Let's just add it to the page to start with. But I might just put it at the top of the page like this, and we'll make this a success alert, and we'll say your changes have been saved like this. Great. And in our workflow, we will show that alert message at the end of this action here. So if I refresh the page, I should be able to now make adjustments to my job post. So if I hit edit on GrantWriter, I'm going to update the expression or the description here. This is a new description for GrantWriter. I'll change the date to the 15th. Let's go further in our years here. Yeah, we'll say the 13th of August, 2020. And we'll also change this to open status. I'll hit save post. We see the alert message, and you can see on the left-hand side, the status has changed to open as well. Okay. All right, now let's look at creating a new post. So this is a system that I like to use for this kind of design, but know that there are many ways to sequence when things get created for the first time in the database. What I'm going to do here is create a new post record, but keep it blank for the most part, and show and pass that data over to this group so that the user can start working with it immediately. Okay, so the first thing that happens is under data, we'll create a new job post. And the only thing I know about this job post is that the company is the current user's company. That's the first thing. And that way that it also shows up in the repeating group immediately, because there's a filter off of that field. And I could go ahead and set the status by default to draft. That's the only thing I know about this post at this point. Then I'm going to pass data to the group on the right so I can immediately start working with it. So I create the post, then I'll display data to my edit group right here. Data to display in this case is the result of step 1. It's my brand new record. And I'm going to go one step further, really help my user out, and set focus to my first input, which is it's the title input up here. So we'll go to set focus and go to the title. All right, so here's what this will look like. Refresh the page. Okay, so we don't have a data source there. I'm going to create a new post, and you see how my input is focused already. We have details here already. Now it looks like there might be a default description that's set up in my data structure. If I go to my data types for job post, there is here a default. So this means that that description will be entered in there if I don't specifically define a description here. If I had set something up myself in this action, then this takes priority and we wouldn't see this, this default value that we've provided at the data type structural level, okay? But now I have a new post, okay? So I can say maybe the start date is the 1st of June, and we'll give this we'll create a new title for, we'll say chemistry for our university here, chemistry professor, and we'll leave the description as is. Oops, hold on, it looks like my, I had made a change and it was forcing me to refresh. That workflow wasn't going to go through, so we'll start over here. So we'll do chemistry professor, and I'll set this to open, and start date is June 1st, and save post. And we see that shows up there because it's sorted by the start date, and this is our most recent start date. I can still do the same thing even if I was looking at an existing record here. So if I'm currently on Math Professor and then I decide I want to go over to create a new post, it's going to reset it for me. This is now my new post from here. So now let's hook up the delete post, and I'm going to show you how you can do a confirmation pop-up to make sure that you don't end up accidentally deleting anything. We prompt the user to double confirm that that is an action they want to take, because it could potentially be a dangerous operation. So we're going to create a pop-up on the screen here to say basically, hey, are you sure you want to delete this post? So I'm going to add a text element to this pop-up. Let's go to the layout, make it a column structure. And this text is going to say, are you sure you want to delete? And we'll put inside of this the name of the post itself. Yeah, we'll do this with this text here. So this pop-up, we want to make sure that the type of content is also set to job post. This is going to function very similar to the edit group on the right, where we have to pass data to the pop-up so that it knows which record we're talking about, because this is a separate element. And I'm going to rename this to pop-up delete job post. So I'll style this a little bit. Let's give this one of our headings here, maybe heading 4, a little bit smaller than that. And inside of this, I'm going to display dynamically, are we sure we want to delete the parent group, referring to the pop-up, parent group's job post title, and then put a question mark there. I'll change the layout so that it's centered, have it fit to content. Let's remove that fixed width setting, fit to content like this. And I think that's pretty good for that one. And then we'll have 2 buttons here for the user to choose from. We'll say yes, delete, and this will be a danger button. We'll make this centered. And then we'll have kind of a secondary button down below that says no, keep job. All right, we do not want to delete, we want to keep it. And this will be kind of a secondary. We want to make it a little bit more subtle. We can do this inverse button here. I'll change the layout spacing just a little bit to make this easier to read. So we'll do some gap spacing, and I'll add a little bit of a margin on top of this text so that it pushes it down just a bit. Okay, so that's the design of the pop-up, but now we need to program it. So when I click on delete, I'm going to trigger a workflow to simply show the pop-up and pass the data to it. We're not actually going to delete anything because they haven't double confirmed for us. So we're going to show the pop-up and then run this display data action. It's a very common second step whenever you show pop-ups. So that's why Bubble pulls this up here. So display data, and the data to display is the parent group's job post. And at that point, the user is now looking at the pop-up. Okay, so now we need to hook up the workflows for both of the buttons. If they say no, keep job, we don't make a change to the database at all. All we need to do is hide the pop-up to say, okay, you're done with this message. You can go back to what you were doing. Hide the pop-up. Versus if they click on yes, delete, then we will delete the record. So we'll run a data change action. We're going to delete a thing. The thing to delete is the parent group's post. And at the same time, we will hide the pop-up. And for one more visual confirmation for the user, we can also show that alert message that we created before. But instead of saying your changes have been saved, we can change the message to say your post was deleted. All right, so I'm going to refresh here and show you all of that working. All right, so we'll take our new chemistry professor action here, or our new post there, and I'm going to hit delete. It will show me this pop-up. I have a little bit of text touching the sides. I could, of course, correct that with some margins that I add to the left or right, or have it not expand to the full width of the parent. If I click on no, keep job, it just hides it. We see that this job is still here, or I can fully confirm clicking yes, delete. That goes away. The group's not visible. We saw our message show up. We even saw it disappear from the repeating group. And there we've pretty much closed the loop on managing all of our details here for our job. So now it's just a matter of fine-tuning all of our appearance properties. So at this point, I feel like things are pretty locked down in their placements. I'm going to go ahead and remove the background style of this one, as well as this one. I don't need to see those colored backgrounds, so it should be a little bit cleaner for me. I'm also going to remove the element borders so that I can see from the UI how things are starting to look. All right, I can also, of course, preview my page, see if there would be any other adjustments that I would make to make it clearer for the user to view. Right, so I might create a little bit of a separation, some kind of a very light background here, just to create separation between the two sections. But this is getting closer to, fine-tuning the design. I might also make the colors of these buttons more uniform in following a style palette. I might give the height of this group a bit more breathing room here. So this group jobs, we could give it some extra padding, maybe 30 pixels of padding at the bottom, 30 at the top to push things down a bit more so that they're not hugging the edges too much. But at this point, it's now just a matter of your stylistic preferences, the tone of your application, but we've now achieved all of the functionality that we want for managing jobs. All right, everyone, we'll see you in the next video.